Hey guys, Ryan Dement from Chasing Happiness Podcast. I hope you guys are having a great day. This week on the podcast, we have Emily Hirsekorn. Hirsekorn. I'm going to get it right. It's close. I
It's close.
butcher, but I will keep on going. Emily is a career confidence coach, but she's working on a couple things that she's going to share in the actual episode. Emily, welcome into the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Happy for you to butcher my name. We were just talking earlier. I love it. Like playfulness, and we're laughing already. I could tell it's a part of what you do. It's certainly a part of my work too. So having fun with all the things, taking no offense, right? It's a great way to
It's
kick it off.
it's the only way to live life. I mean, if you take life so seriously, how are you gonna get anything done? I mean, I saw a post and I digress and we'll get into who you are. But someone was talking about living with regret and everything that
Mm,
pretty much goes on in our lives. And he's probably older, was probably in his 60s. It was a blog post, and he was interviewing a kid that was in his 20s. And I say kid because I'm almost 50. And he asked him a question that I ask all the time. What's more valuable, time or money? The kid said money. And it's
mm.
like, do we forget that time is the most critical asset we have because you never get it back? We don't know how long we're going to be on this planet.
Yeah. And perspective, right? I think it's
Sure.
interesting you highlighted the ages. When you're
Yes.
young, I mean, that's what you're going after. I've been thinking a lot about this. Super open here, happy to share my age too. So I'm 37
Young
and
pup.
I'm so young. I know. Oh, thank you. In some circles, I'm at that weird stage. In some circles, I'm the youngest. Some circles, I'm the oldest. But definitely that I'm starting to get to that middle age part of my life where you're thinking about things differently, little sense of mortality seeping in. Um, and I think about that. Yeah, when I was young, I never thought about that stuff. My
Yeah.
career meant everything to me. Money was on my mind too. I got to go get a great job, make a lot of money, have that sense of security for me and my
Hmm.
future family. So I get it, 20-year-old. I get it.
But we're going down rabbit holes, man. You're one of the few guests. I just go right down a rabbit hole before introducing you. So let's get you introduced first,
Sure.
and then we'll go down rabbit holes. So Emily, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, and then we'll get onto your journey and some rabbit holes.
Sure. And happy to lead the way down those two. So I came out of the legal field. I practiced law for just a couple of years. That's part of my story. Um, Very high achiever all of my life in school, undergrad, and law school. That served me really well. Beating yourself up for not
Hmm.
being perfect works really well when you're trying to get good grades and you get back in there, right? And you keep working. You don't do anything else. Um, and same thing early on with your career in those high stress industries. So that was it. Very early on, it failed me. So I used to work independently on my own when I was in school. I did not know how to work with other humans. So that really was a struggle for me when I got into the real world. And I couldn't just hole up and do the work by myself, independent of everybody else. So that happened, failing marriage, and I got very sick. And a lot of things are coming out nowadays about autoimmune diseases
Hmm.
and issues being connected to stress levels. Actually, I have
Wow.
three autoimmune diseases that really manifested over the years. But it started when I was in law school um, and got progressively worse from there. So, really, really tough spot. Totally changed up everything and shifted in terms of my career, really finding more of what I felt like I was meant to be doing. And ultimately, I worked in law career development for a university for years and ultimately made my way into coaching and realized, oh, this is what I've been looking for the whole time. I just didn't have the language for it. So to wrap it up, in undergrad, I did research with a really significant professor in the field of positive psychology on hope and that's all about goals. And I knew I wanted to help people achieve their goals, but again, no one was talking about coaching at the time. So
Mhm.
coming full circle to that was really, really powerful for me, really interesting experience. And then in terms of who I'm currently serving, I do support a lot of lawyers
Okay.
because of my network. Lawyers trust lawyers. They're like, you get it, you know, you've been there. Um, and I also have been again doing that work in the field for years. And then I'm working with other folks too, mid-level managers, a variety of different, again, kind of high stress industries. I have a couple of clients, for example, who are in NFL management, and they've got,
Oh,
football
cool.
seasons. Yeah, football season's coming up. They're like, yeah, we've got very busy seasons, things fluctuate. So um, it is interesting to see, though, at the end of the day, it's the same shit across the board. People struggle with work life balance. People
Yes.
struggle to take care of themselves and tend to prioritize everybody else or their work over themselves. And people struggle with relationships and
Mhm.
navigating the different dynamics in the workforce. That's the nutshell.
The nutshell, but there's so many rabbit holes we can go down with your story. So, you
Choose your own
before
adventure.
it's a great story. I mean, let's talk about it. You started when did you go to law school? How old were you?
So I went straight through right after undergrad, and it was interesting timing actually. So went in 2007. Things looked great. I went because it was a safe career. Didn't know what to do with my psychology degree, and then 2008
Tanked.
was, yeah, the
Yes.
market tanked. So I graduated in the worst year, 2010, for law school graduates in recent history.
Hmm.
And I did very well in school. So I'm if I had stayed where I went to school, I probably would have had a job. But I decided to move to San Diego with an ex at the time, and yeah, it was a tough time finding a job. But I did it because I was relentless and I networked my tush off.
But so let's back up. Um, you networked your tushy off, and that's one skill set a lot of people don't have. We have this instant gratification culture going on on the internet. I'm going to be an instant gratification type of a person and say this. I saw the statistic, and we can go back and forth on it. 1 out of 4 Gen Zers think they're going to be a social influencer in
Mm,
their lives. 1 in 4, 20%.
yeah. Yeah,
And
I
I'm
mean,
thinking,
look, it's the same. It's not far from the coaching industry. Like, there's all these promises about work
yes,
from Bali, and work for, I've got on my shelf the 4-hour work week, right? Like,
yeah.
work a few hours a week and, make millions, all these things that were being sold on the internet too. So I think it is a really hard time to be, and as a coach, it's my job to help people dream and balance it with realism, right?
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we're doing both, because a lot of the folks I support, especially these hyper rational is actually my like biggest saboteur. I've taken assessments on this stuff, but same thing with a lot of lawyers. Hyper rational folks who play it safe don't want to take risks. So I have to push them on the other end of the spectrum to dream. Like, don't go let go of that. And what can we do in the meantime? How can we work towards both a better practical short-term solution and also that bigger dream?
So I've gotta ask, and I don't think we talked about it on the pre-call, but I'm gonna ask. How do you deal with those a-hole attorneys that wanna be a client?
This is so funny. Those folks don't reach out to me. So my marketing, I must be doing a good job with my marketing.
You are, because you are niched down
Yeah,
properly, and that is
it's
crazy, but
true.
but the funny thing is, on my end of that business, they all
Yeah.
reach out to me, every single one of them. But it's
Yeah.
what I'm known for from the referral base that I work from, so at the end of the day,
Exactly. It is,
it's
yeah.
what
Who knows you? Yep.
it's what I get, but
Yeah.
I'm this for me personally is tough also is because I'm trying to niche down on another side of my business that we've started through our nonprofit is financial coaching, but also change coaching. And being, I don't know how to say it, softer, less direct
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
in my DNA, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And so I have to explain to people, if you're looking for somebody to hold you and say it's gonna be okay, I'm not your person because I'm gonna hold you accountable. I'm gonna make you do the
Mhm.
work, but
Mhm.
I will be your biggest cheerleader. I'll be your supporter. I will do whatever it takes I can do in my power, but at the end of the day, you've gotta do the work. And I'm starting to get to that point where I'm niched down to where we're starting to see those people roll in. And it was funny as I in short story, and then I'll let it go. I had a person come in and he basically said, I saw your intro video and at first I thought you were an asshole and it ended up being you're actually a really cool guy once I get to know you. And I'm like, "Ching!" I'm
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
I
that
I
works,
am
that
totally
works.
there and it worked. And that's when you know you're there, and that's cool that you're not attracting
Yeah,
any a-holes into your business. That's awesome.
I yeah, that's never happened, which is awesome. And look, also it is nice that as a business owner doing this type of work, we're assessing fit, right? It's
Mhm.
important. I'm sure you have some version of a consult too. I certainly do consults before engaging with folks. On a one-to-one level, and I think that's really valuable. I also think I love this topic because I think it's so important for folks to understand it is critical that you find the right fit coach.
Correct.
I don't agree that coaching is coaching. I don't think it's all the same thing. And not only because we all have different training and backgrounds. I always tell people I'm kind of like a motivational speaker. And that's a really different dimension to coaching. That's not really the same thing as coaching. But I do that. If you
Mhm.
can't tell from my energy, um, I'm not often, I have done them, but I'm not often doing like meditation sessions on my coaching calls.
No,
Um,
I
we
don't
can
either.
talk, yeah, we can talk meditation. I have a lot of clients who do it. I do it, but that's not normally part of my shtick. So I think
Mhm.
it's such an important topic for consumers to be thinking about. Who is the right coach for me? What style is going to motivate me best? Like what you're talking about, that is so valuable for high performers to have someone. I've had plenty of people tell me, I'm also very direct. I've had plenty of people tell me when I say I've done some sample coaching sessions in the past, I say, what do you notice about the coaching? How's it different from a typical conversation? And they're like, well, you kind of called me out on my shit. I'm like, yeah, we're identifying some things that maybe you're not thinking about so much,
Yes.
and that can be really valuable for people who are seeking that, and don't have other folks in their life where it's a comfortable relationship for that. So it's definitely a unique relationship.
But we go to the opposite side and we're going down a rabbit hole and we'll have to come back, then you have whether they're a high performer or not, you have those individuals, at least from my experience and what I've unfortunately attracted in, I don't need a coach. Well, then why are you calling me? You know,
Hmm.
that and those individuals automatically just doubt you up to the hill and back. And my thought process to them, if you reached out to me, you know that there's something in your life that you need to change, but you need help with it, and you're looking for somebody to guide you. If that's the case, then we might be a match. But if you're looking for somebody to do the work, I'm not it. And then they'll
Yeah,
come back with,
consultant.
yeah, and they'll come back with a different answer and so forth. But that's type of individual has a lot more baggage going on in life
Hmm.
other than just change that I can't fix because I am not a psychologist nor am I a counselor. And that's why I work with some and hand them off. But
Hmm.
those individuals typically will have something else going on, and that's when I ask them, "Hey, I mean, if you have something else going on, I do have resources. Don't
Yeah.
have to use them, but here's some
Yeah.
other online resources to go to." And that seems to be helping too, but before, I would shut them down. I mean, it's like, I don't have
Yeah.
time.
I think coaches all differ too in terms of the level of buy in that they're
Yes.
willing to attempt. So for some, I know people are like, it's a hell yes or a hell no. And like, you just let me know and then we'll move on from there. I think a lot of others are really into the buy in idea. And I have no opinion on this, by the way. I actually think all approaches have their pros and cons. But I think it's an interesting approach too, where this idea that, like you said, they called for a reason. So maybe
Correct.
intuitively, deep down, they know they need support, but they're
Mhm.
having trouble coming to terms with it or whatever it may be. Sometimes they need some help getting to that place where they can recognize that. So I know some folks who do dig a little bit deeper, and I have a lot of respect for that too. I usually get some folks asking things like, because in the legal field there's so much anxiety and depression, um,
Mhm.
folks asking, I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Is coaching also appropriate for me? Or even folks saying, how do I know if I need coaching or therapy? So that's an important conversation where you can really make that distinction. Like you said, we're not here to address clinical mental health issues, but really figuring out what goals do you have? How can we help you thrive and move forward? So that definitely comes up pretty often.
So, I wanna go back to some of your story, but I wanna finish that first. How do you
Yeah.
address that when you have somebody come in that tells you that, they're depressed and so forth and wanna go through the whole coaching realm? What's that intake look like for you?
Yeah. So one thing I believe, I know all coaches have different backgrounds. I do believe that some sort of training is important.
Mhm.
The coach training program that I completed a couple of years ago when I made my shift, we are trained to identify some red flags where someone might not be quite ready for coaching. And again, people have different theories on this, whether everyone can benefit. But I do think that that's important. If someone is chronically depressed, for
Mhm.
example, it's going to be really hard to benefit from coaching where we're setting goals, trying to hold them
Yeah,
accountable, getting them to move when they're having trouble doing much of anything. So that's something to be thinking about. And I've had this conversation a lot, and it's never been ill received. People have always been really appreciative
good.
of having an open conversation about it. I also talk to people about, I've plenty of folks who see a therapist and a coach. I'm a big fan of therapy. So I do the same thing. Use my therapist for more kind of psychoanalytic childhood stuff and personal relationships. Um, and like we talk about attachment theory and all of that good stuff. And then coaching is more, um, the way I use it is more business focused and setting goals for myself, making shifts, but really concrete outcomes. So I also think explaining the process is really helpful for people to understand. Most people don't
Mhm.
know a damn thing about it, right? So explaining to them every single session, we're going to come together, we're going to set a goal, you're going to have action items when you leave. So it's very action oriented. We're of course figuring out how you're getting in your own way, and we're going to clear that stuff out. But it's pretty quick, and so we're moving. So that's, I mean, a very superficial description, but having that honest conversation with folks.
And it's the honest conversation that needs to be had. It's it's refreshing, but it's also unfortunately, some people, it's tough to have that conversation, and like you
Sure.
said, coaching is different across the board, and we I've experienced people that I've looked for a mentor or coach, they're just
Oops, sorry about the dog.
it's alright, um, that they they actually are just a bunch of, you know, just not they're not a coach. They're just looking to get a paycheck, and that's unfortunate, and I think that's where some of the things that happen in the industry coaching-wise, stems from, but building
Mm,
that relationship up front, like the intake that you're talking about, you're taking the
yeah.
time to get to know them and understand where they're going is huge, and there's quite a bit of coaches that don't even do that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even end there. I have in my agreement that I have people review and sign initially, acknowledgement that they're not using coaching in lieu of mental health services. I have something in there that if they are in therapy, their therapist has approved of them
Yes.
using a coach. So I really do go to that length. And then the other thing I always tell people, because I have, a structure, but I'm also flexible, and I tell them, if at any time some concerns pop up, and this has happened on occasion, it's been rare, but whether we think things have changed and maybe it becomes, it's not appropriate anymore, we'll have that conversation then too. So I also make a parent kind of an extension of what you were just talking about, like in terms of ethics, coaching
Mhm.
ethics. My point is, I'm not trying to trap you into some long-term coaching package and then you're just
Yes.
losing your money if things don't work out. I have like a guarantee and a refund policy, so I think that's a big important piece. And look, that's also the business side of things. We're trained to, the craft. I know this dog.
Let's
We're
let's see your
trained.
let's see your puppy. What you got there?
This is Leafy. My giant one is in
Alright.
his crate right now because his bark is much louder, if you can believe that.
Cute. I have a dog, but he's in my room. He's away because he's a big dog and his bark is big. So he
Oh,
has
what
to
kind of dog?
he's a chocolate lab. His name is Moose.
Oh, so I
Yes.
have an Anatolian Shepherd Great Pyrenees who's
Oh,
in the,
wow.
yes, he's
Big.
giant. Andre, the giant, yes.
Andre. Cool. How much does
Yeah.
Andre weigh?
He's about 130.
Big boy.
He's
Big
a
boy.
big boy. Yes, he's awesome, but he has a very loud bark. Um, so, anyways, I think this is an important topic, though, for people to be thinking a little bit more about, the ethics of coaching, but also the business side. So, for coaches who are starting out, I think we're encouraged in this industry to just get out there and do the damn thing. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer in simultaneously, also taking care of the business side and things that are
Of
really
course.
important too.
By all means, I mean, that's the best thing to do is you got both sides covered because ultimately, if you don't, unfortunately, something will go wrong and it's not worth it. I mean, it's your personal brand, it's yourself that's out there, and you've put all that work in and it falls apart. And that, I mean, that we could go down another rabbit hole for entrepreneurship
Yeah.
and being able
Yeah.
to set your business up correct, making sure that you've got all the pieces lined up on both sides, whether it be the business, your personal brand in both lining up. It's tough. So um, I want to go back, shift back to law school. You graduate,
Mm.
you're networking your ass off. You got yourself a job in San Diego. What kind of goes from there? And then we'll go down that path and see where it takes us.
Sure. So it was interesting because when I was in law school, first of all, going to law school was, um, an interesting choice because I didn't really know what to do with the psych degree. I decided I didn't want to get my PhD because that was like 8 more years of school. And, when you're young, that sounds crazy. And you're not guaranteed to come out making millions. So I was like, well, I'll just go to law school for 3 years and come out making a lot of money. That literally was how I made the decision. So I went, I did really well, but I had no idea what lawyers did, like, no clue, had never been in a corporate office before. Um, I had a great gig during law school with a big firm in Sacramento, and I did well. And I also started like, noticing the stressors. And then when I moved, the job that I ultimately went into, I had no experience in the field, but my network pulled through for me, and through a series of events, I ended up in education law. And so it had this interesting, unique promise of working defense, which I wanted to do. So a firm where I was making pretty good money, but also doing something for the greater good.
Mhm.
Now, I was on the defense side, so certain matters felt good. For example, the labor and employment work I did, where we were helping um, the schools get folks out of the classroom or off campuses who were doing stupid stuff,
Mhm.
who were not treating the students well. There was, a custodian who was drinking, like stuff like that. So that felt really good. Um, I really struggled with the special ed and the student side of things being on the defense because, like mediations, for example, there literally could be a child with special needs on the other side of the table.
Wow.
And I've always been very passionate about social justice. And so that was hard for me. Um, and look, I fully acknowledge, I think it was situational, and I fully acknowledge that I had poor self-awareness in some respects. I wasn't fully supported. I was lonely because I was in a new city with my ex and didn't have a friend base. I didn't have a community. And frankly, I didn't realize how important that was to me until years later. So, I emphasized it. Oh, I got to meet people. I got to do this. But like now, that is my number one goal constantly in everything that I'm doing. How can I establish community for myself and for my family? So that was a really big challenge for me. I was not in therapy. I did not have a coach. So I just left. I quit my job before I had anything else lined up, which, back in the day was a big no no. Um, and, I made my way into other jobs because, again, that relentless networking, and I knew I'd be fine. And then ultimately, I got into law school career development, and that was a really great step in the right direction for me. I see what I do now as an extension of that work, but really great fit, just longer term, bigger picture. It didn't make sense. It's, those are dead end jobs, and I wanted to ultimately work for myself. But great step in the right direction, which I feel like is what I'm helping a lot of folks figure out. Everyone's thinking about that ultimate job, but it's like, okay, let's also move in the right direction if you need to move
Gotta move
now.
forward, yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. So that's in brief what was going on. And then I had a couple of babies, and the health issues really flared up. I was super, super sick. And at the time, I was taking some time off of work, I was teaching. And gosh, when I was really sick, I would have these like spells where I would be have a fever and night sweats and like could hardly walk. And then I had to go teach a class a couple days later, and I would get it done, and then I would go back home and was just miserable. And finally figured out what was going on a few months later. And thankfully, modern medicine has helped put that stuff in remission, but it's stuff that still comes up. So that's something I actually don't talk much about, but is definitely something that's interesting. Folks who have leaders, especially folks who are expected to be leading teams, and they're actually struggling themselves with health issues or invisible
Mhm.
disabilities that people might not even know of.
But that's all part of being a leader, is humanizing the leader, and it's something that, um, I spent 25 years in the finance world before I decided to dive into entrepreneurship, but the thing that I can tell you from being in corporate America versus entrepreneurship is, and I think we talked about this, corporate America never taught me how to fish. It kept me fed every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
no worries,
Yeah.
and no blame on them, blame on me, shame on me. That's why I had 2 failed businesses before I got to my 3rd business, because I didn't know how to fish. So when I left corporate America, I had no clue how to fish and sustain myself, but I knew how to lead people because I led 2,000, 2,500 people. It was trial by fire,
Yeah.
but I learned, and the way I don't know how to describe it. It happened early on in my career where one of my bosses came in and said, "You suck as a manager, and you need to become a leader. So the first thing you need to learn is put brain in gear before mouth opens." And
Mm.
I was like, " this is young 20s," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, I don't know what you mean," type of thing, and he's in his late 50s, early 60s at the time, and it took me some time to figure that out and understand that, and that kind of what kicked everything off is it's all about the people that you surround yourself with, whether you're their boss or not. If you're able to bring those people into the fold and share the visions, share the ideas, you're gonna get collaboration to where people are gonna start following you, and you go from a manager to a leader, but
Hmm.
you also effectively change the way who you are and how you outwardly portray yourself, 1, and 2, um, how your dynamic, and I say dynamics because 'cause I'm gonna back up on that, is the dynamics come out because there's times where I'm just so direct, people don't wanna hear it because I'm not gonna put up with people's BS, and there's
Hmm.
sometimes I can sugarcoat it, but I don't think I should. I just turn that switch on, say, "Okay, I'm gonna do it," because I know the audience, and I think that's where you learn your value as a leader because managers are just gonna be people that tell you what to do. They're not gonna be that person that's gonna show you how to do it, or they've
Hmm.
been in the trenches before, and they're dynamic. They're able to switch those different pull those different levers within themselves to help guide, but also lead people. And my goal in life was always to how many managers that work for me could I get promoted, effectively get promoted and grow through the ranks and become leaders and not managers. And that's how I really weighed my leadership skills. I
Yeah.
have in the two last businesses, they were Fortune 25 companies that I worked in. I had a 25% rate of success when it came to leadership, highest in my group. And it was like, okay, I'm doing something. And it was fun. And that's the one piece I would say entrepreneurship is different. Um, unless I decide to pull up $1 billion company here anytime soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the next one, right?
it's the next slide.
There's
I
time.
I do miss leading, thousands of people because I get to
Yeah.
impact so many more people, and I think that's where the podcast came in through all this. I ramble on, but that's where it is the impact. My voice gets out there, and I feel like I can not just touch one person, I can touch multiple people.
Yeah. I mean, so much there. The two big things that are coming to mind for me. Number one word for what you're talking about. Ready? We can pare it all down to empowerment.
Yes.
A leader empowers other people, a
Mhm.
manager does not, right?
Correct.
So the work still gets done. However, when we're thinking about the bigger picture, the bigger outcomes, business outcomes at the end of the day, empowerment helps with engagement,
Mhm.
fulfillment,
Yes.
retention, those business outcomes. So, huge, huge difference. I think it's very easy to get short sighted and say, just get this shit done, right?
Yeah.
Just do it, or just do it this way and not have a collaborative conversation. That takes more time. So, it takes you have to get people to buy in to understand it's really short term versus long term. Can you see that taking a little bit more time up front, you're making an investment in better big picture and
Mhm.
long term outcomes? So that's number one. The other thing is, I use the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or IPEC. I use their energy leadership framework, exactly what you're talking about, higher level consciousness. That's what those leaders are using. When you can choose, like you said, the energy that you're showing up with, when you can choose, do I want to be direct here? Do I want to sugarcoat? And why? That takes high level consciousness. When
Mhm.
people are just managing and not thinking really, not tapping into intuition, just none of it, right? You're just
Yeah.
going through the motions and getting shit done. um, Not so conscious. That's not a way to live consciously. And again, you're operating with lower level energy. It's more stress inducing, it's fear based,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
doesn't have those good long term outcomes. So I love that idea that you were describing of choosing your energy. That is the basis of my practice. teaching people tools to learn how to shift their energy on demand. If I'm showing up and this is what I'm thinking in the situation and it's not serving me well,
Mhm.
what's a more productive way of thinking? And then your outcomes will follow. So we are on the same page with all of that.
You know, the funny, not f I don't wanna say funny, I shouldn't say that. The situation I come across in my referral business, my referral coaching business is the person that's calling me is unfortunately in a very bad spot, and their back is up against the wall. And if their back is up against the wall, I only know 2 outcomes. Either they go out of business or they stay in business. There's nothing in between. I don't there's no way I can sugarcoat that. And most of the time when they're coming to me, they're like, "Okay," they're gonna be a little bit of an a-hole, and then I warm them up and I tune them up a little bit and say, "Hey, if you're coming to me, either you're at the end and they're there and you wanna change, or 2, you're trying to get a deal done through somebody I know, and you've gotta do X, Y, and Z steps to get going." All fine and dandy. The problem is these individuals will think at times that I'm going to do the work for them. And
Mm,
and I come back to it is that's where I can't differentiate between sugarcoating and being direct. I only know to be direct in that situation. And I don't know, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that's the only way I know to handle those situations. When you're coming to me when your back's against the wall, I only know one way, and that's turning the engine on and going full tilt and figuring out what the problem is, digging deep, and then understanding that there's going to be some outcomes that will transpire once we get to a place to where your back is not up against the wall and we're a little bit safer. I can pull back on being that person that's driving you or pushing you to say I can work with you a little bit more. And I think that's a balancing act, whether it's coaching or not in life. And I'm going to ask you after that long spiel. A question is, how do you take that individual that is a high performer like an attorney? And then
mm.
I think, and this is just me, those NFL individuals that are in the NFL management of teams, I think that takes it to a whole nother level. So how do you work between those 2 types of individuals?
First of all, I don't think we can stereotype as much as we'd like to be able to. I'm telling you, first of all, the folks that I'm supporting who work in NFL management, they are like the sweetest people. they're they're so sweet, and they're talking about balance. They're talking about how much they care about their family. I mean, it's not what you might think, like go 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 and performance performance, and it's really interesting. And we've already talked about the folks I'm supporting in law too. I think a lot of
Mhm,
them are coming to someone who has life coach in their title. I call myself an executive life and leadership coach now, because that was the best. At some point, I'm like, how can I just describe what I'm doing? Um, I think people are coming to someone like me because they care about their career and the other stuff. So I will say that performance is important, but a lot of times I'm helping them over and over. I do this exercise redefining success, and it's very consistent across the board. We're talking about a friend of mine, an industry friend of mine, just wrote a book. I don't think it's been released yet. He let me see a little sneak peek, but in there he includes the Merriam-Webster definition of success. And I don't know if you're
mhm.
aware of this, but it literally has that traditional idea about fame and wealth, and it's
Yes.
it's just shocking. And so when I do that exercise with people across the board, it's this big like aha moment. Well, this is how I've been operating according to that traditional notion. I've been operating as if achievement at work was my number one value in life. But in reality, how I want to define success is having a happy and healthy family, taking care of my family, doing the things I love. So that's a really cool point where we identify the gap,
Mhm,
and then we can start coaching to fill it. Okay, how do we make this shift? everyone has so many options that they do not realize. And I think that's a big role of a coach as well, where these people have been operating for so long, feeling like I have one path and I just need to stick my head down and keep working and stick to it. And all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, I actually have options. Um, I mean, I really, it's like this light bulb moment. I could leave my job and be okay. Like, we're always so afraid of getting fired. And I asked someone the other day, what's the worst case scenario? And we got to a point where he was like, oh my gosh, that actually might be awesome if I got fired. Then I could have the space to explore what I really wanted to do. And it was just
Wow.
this mind blowing moment for someone
So
to have.
so is that person not happy with their job?
Not happy is like, we'd have to flesh that out. It's like most of these folks. It's an important career. They've worked very hard for. They're making good money. Um, there are good
Ah,
aspects. There are good aspects, but it's not fulfilling. Like something's missing for them,
it's
and there's always
all
that struggle.
it's all
Oh, external.
exterior.
Mm.
Yes. Their
It's
inners
a
don't match their outers.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And I think the other thing is for a lot of folks, um, the other things that matter, like collaboration or some people's socialization,
Mhm.
they may get it at work or in certain jobs, and that works, but then not in other ones. Or for someone, they may have gotten it early on, and then over time they feel isolated. Another issue for leadership, that's a common thing we hear, right? Where leaders, when you're at the top, you're more kind of on your own,
Yep.
which, and same thing with working for yourself. How do you maintain that human need for community and socialization?
I feel that on a daily basis, and this journey of podcasting is let me, be introduced to individuals like yourself and others, and I've met some really great people, and out of it has come 4 or 5 people are like, "Why don't we put some type of podcasting slash entrepreneur spin on stuff and start sharing some struggles that we've all had along the journey and then invite some people in that are having those struggles and be able to work with them." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Cool, sign me
yeah,
up," because
yep,
I would love to share that information with people because there's been so many days that I'm like, "Man, I'm getting my ass whooped, and I gotta get back up because otherwise the bills don't get paid, the food doesn't get on the
yes,
table, the rent doesn't get paid, everything." And those days suck.
yeah, no
And
PTO.
yeah, no PTO. And I don't know any other way now at this point. It's like you have to just suck it up, buttercup, and you gotta go. And but it doesn't mean at the expense of what's up here between my ears. I mean, you've gotta work through that and understand what's going on.
Yeah,
But it's the other aspect to where you're able to balance some of that out and say, "Okay, I gotta be persistent and consistent in my journey, but I also have to be persistent and consistent with myself and making sure I'm taking care of myself." And that's a balancing act that we all struggle with. I know I struggle with it on a daily basis. The thing that and I'm down a rabbit hole again. The thing that I wanna ask, what drew these NFL individuals, management individuals to say, "I need a coach"? What 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 was the tipping point, or what are some things that brought them to you and said, "Okay, I'm ready"?
So good question. I actually coach them through a coaching platform that I
Okay.
get business through. So that was not a direct relationship.
Okay.
But the idea there was from corporate. So I like this question because this is an example of companies prioritizing
Mhm.
their employee well-being. And I love this idea that most coaches, I think, doing similar work to me, we're focusing on two things: performance and well being.
Yes.
What are you doing? And how are you doing?
Mhm.
And both are equally important to, like we talked about earlier, to the company's outcomes, to retention, to fulfillment, all of these things. So I give so many kudos to these organizations that are really prioritizing it, that are recognizing the value of coaching. And I can tell you, um, a new client of mine that I met with this week, I mean, he was just so grateful and so ecstatic about getting started, about development. And he's currently in leadership, he has a background in leadership. And I just think it's fascinating to see people nowadays where the people who really get it. I think when we were talking earlier about a leader who is truly an empowering leader versus a
Mhm.
manager, um, in IPEX language, we talk about anabolic energy or leadership versus catabolic. Anabolic is constructive energy, catabolic is destructive. Um, it's palpably different. And this idea that the energy we bring to the table is contagious, that is a huge part of influencing other people. Um, it's really interesting to see it from the top where you're putting your money where your mouth is. I definitely have law
Yep.
firms too who are sending folks to me and paying for their associates coaching. And it's a matter of actually showing up for your team instead of kind of the age old. I mean, we still have an issue with this, but like the DEI policies or the work life balance policies that started
Mhm.
popping up, 20 years ago or whatever. And we all just kind of like roll our eyes about it. Like it's bullshit. It's just on paper. Right. So you have to really you have to show up and you have to really put your money where your mouth is. As the leadership, you have to do the work too. So when you were talking about that, your moment of vulnerability, I'm just over here thinking, self care. I'm not good at it. Um, I think it's important for coaches to talk about how we receive coaching too, and how we
Yes.
get help too, and we struggle too.
And we're human beings, and we
We're human
struggle with
too.
all types of problems. I mean, I struggle with change every single day. I mean, it's I'm a human being, but the when someone someone asks me, "Well, how do you deal with change or how do you deal with struggles?" And I'm like, I have a core group of people that I can talk to, discuss things with, and run ideas by. But the other thing is, I think we did talk about it earlier, is you talk about meditation, I talk about quiet time. I get up in the morning, I give myself 30 to 45 minutes, no phone, no nothing, and I just sit there and I think about everything that I'm grateful for and thankful for in my life to center me, calm me, whatever you want to do. That starts my day. So my day is starting, I'm not all the way up here, already
Yeah.
stressed out about all the things I've got to do. It's more about taking care of myself up here and making sure my heart is still filled, with the things that I'm thankful for. I mean, to this day, I joke with people, but I always say, what are the four things that you're the most grateful for? Those are the things should be thinking about when you go to bed and when you wake up in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. And if you can't be thankful for a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food on the table, and your bills paid, there's a struggle, because that's our basic necessities are taken care of. Your
Yeah.
four walls are taken care of. Everything on top of that for me is bonus, and I always
And
consider it
research
that way,
backs that up.
bonus.
The psychology research backs that up. It literally has been proven to lead to more happiness if you
Correct.
are doing my 6-year-old and I, we call it the three things exercise. But Martin Seligman talks about it, positive psychologist, talks about it before you go to bed. And I always say to folks, I encourage a lot of my clients to do it. The key, though, the key, because sometimes we're like, oh, it feels superficial and I don't feel anything. I think the key is identify what you're grateful for and then why. And
Yeah.
the reason is that takes it to another level. That helps you identify what you care about most. And also, for example, I like to say, again, from positive psychology, the recommendation is to identify events from the day that you're grateful for. So let's say I say I'm grateful for my son and his friend walking to school together this morning, and they were in like really good moods and went really smoothly. And then I ask, why did that happen? So, a couple of things there. One, pulling back from gratitude for a minute, I can think about my own strengths, which is so
Mhm.
important. Well, what did I do well? Well, I'm actually killing it as a mom. Go me. Like I did a good job getting them together, taking care of my community, helping my friends out, walking their kid too. And then the other thing is thinking about the community, your surroundings, and who else made that stuff happen. So that is like enhanced gratitude exercise. I think it's a really wonderful thing to do. I love what you're talking about in the morning. For my big thing is I work at nights. I work nights. I do 9 p.m. calls, which a lot of times people think is crazy. Um, but the reason is I start slow in the morning, and that has been such a beautiful shift for me. So I have young kids, so I don't really have the space to be meditating. But in the mornings, the way things are, but I get up at like 7, no more 5:30 alarm like I used to set, and
Mhm.
I take it easy. We don't have to rush. The kids can do a little, play or whatever. And then I take this beautiful walk in my lovely neighborhood to school and back. I walk the dog. I see people in the community. I come back and eat breakfast and I start calls at 10 a.m. That has really changed my life. And it's not like a specific activity, but just stretching that out. And so I'm with you 100%. We have to think about what we need, what works best for us in today's modern world. If we can adjust our schedule to accommodate it, all the better. And how can we carry that with us throughout the day? That kind of
Yeah.
gratitude and appreciation for what you have.
It's the little things in life, and I joke about that, or tongue in cheek, however you wanna say it, but it's truly the little things in life that get you to the next steps in where that goes, because I I've always believed what you put out is what you get back, and in who's I mean, maybe there's a saying out there, whatever, is I said the inners have to match the outers. So if you're negative all the time, guess who you're surrounding yourself with? Negative people. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just unfortunate. But if you're thankful and you're positive and you try to work towards something better in your life, you surround yourself with those individuals. And me putting out the podcast, I think that's also done another level for me, because now it's attracting a ton of guests that have come on. And I there's not a single guest that I don't take a huge amount of nuggets from and say, "Oh my
Mm.
god, that's like cool, earth changing or earth shattering, whatever." But it's just refreshing to hear how so many people out there have these great ideas and they're living their lives the way they want to live and sharing it. Because that's the key to everything, is share and help as many people as you possibly can. And I joke, if I help one person with the podcast, I'm golden, but I
Yep.
know I'm helping more than that. But that's the great joy I have in podcasting, is getting my voice out there, meeting wonderful people like yourself, and just having healthy conversations like we are today.
Well, and I think it also it's interesting. I've always thought it was interesting, and I haven't been working for myself for very long, but um, I've heard it time and time again how it could be lonely as an entrepreneur or solopreneur.
Yes.
I've never experienced that because I started doing this on my own during COVID. I started my business right before COVID hit, and I've been connecting with people virtually the entire time. I have so many networking conversations. I mean, in my last job, traditional job, I didn't need to network. It was that kind of job where I did my work and I went home. I kind of liked it like that. And like I said, I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to network my way up to the top or switch. I was at a university. I wasn't going to switch universities. Um,
Yes.
so it's really been interesting for me, where I always say now I've chosen colleagues and
Mhm.
frankly more chosen conversations, and also working from home has been really really wonderful for me. I know a lot of people experience microaggressions in the workplace and have appreciated being away from that. Not that I was experiencing that so much, but it's the similar idea of just the anxious energy from the office. Personally, I totally feel anxious when people are like whispering in the office outside my door, and it's just distraction energy. So yeah, just being able to be in my home and having no self consciousness about how I'm spending my time. Of course, I can certainly do the mindset work around that too, but it was such an easy fix, right, to work for myself. and just kind of eliminate that immediately. So it's been an interesting transition, and I think it's important for everyone to be thinking about that. Chosen colleagues, chosen conversations, and chosen work at the end of the day.
Amen to that. I mean, that's going after your passion and doing what you love and surrounding yourself with people that are going to support you in that tribe, your community. That's huge. I'm with you 100%. Emily, wow, we've got an hour. Woof. Guess everyone's going to have to listen for the full hour here. Um, how can the listeners get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out to you for some leadership coaching?
Yes, so my website is Hirsekorn, my last name, coaching.com. That's Hirsekorn, coaching.com. You can get all the scoop on there. Also accessible by email, Emily at hirsekorncoaching.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, and happy to share information on free consults, chat with anyone, answer questions by email. Got some exciting programming that I'm going to be launching very, very soon. I'm developing it right now. It's going to be leadership development programming, really ideal for folks who are in leadership roles, but also rising leaders. So I've noticed over the past few years that there's kind of a gap in the market for people who
Mhm.
are up and coming. And I think it's important for corporate to recognize that they've invested quite a bit in those folks, and when there's a hot lateral market, it's nice to work to retain them. And in addition to, of course, doing the right thing and supporting their folks. So that's a program that's going to be rolling out. It's a 6-month program, lots of good structure for the folks who crave structure, and then also some one on one coaching as well.
Awesome. I will put all your contact information in the show notes so they can get a hold of you too.
Perfect.
So that'll be easy peasy there. Emily, thank you for coming on the show. Very honored. Healthy conversation. Love what you're doing. Love your approach. Uh, couldn't be uh, couldn't be a better conversation whatsoever. I mean, we're talking about attorneys, my favorite topic at times, tongue in cheek. It was cool to hear some of your stories. I mean, that's the best thing about podcasting. I get to learn other people's stories.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me. I agree. We realized really quickly we clicked, we
Don't
got
worry.
something in common. Yeah, our style. So it was good. Thank you. It was
It
fun.
was fun, and it's a healthy conversation, and we can go back and forth, and we can definitely have you come back on, and we can talk about some of your new stuff when it comes out.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.